Welcome back to the deep dive. We're continuing our series, Navigating a Business Model. And this whole series, it's really about taking these complex strategic ideas and breaking them down into actionable sort of atomic units, giving you clear explanations, practical insights, stuff you can actually use as entrepreneurs and leaders. Today, we're zooming right in on something absolutely crucial, something that honestly often gets pushed aside in that early startup rush: building your Rockstar team. And look, we're not just talking about, sticking up a job ad. We mean strategically investing the time to really get recruitment right from hire number one, which also means understanding that not every initial hire, no matter how amazing they are right now, can necessarily scale with the company. When things really take off, we'll dig into how you proactively develop an org chart that actually grows with your business organically. And maybe most important, how you plan career paths. How do you keep your best people from leaving? Because you've been there, right? You've got that killer idea, the product's coming together, and the pressure is just on to get anybody in the door to help out. But is that somebody somebody for the long haul? Because, well, as we're going to unpack today, just filling a seat, that can accidentally create huge problems down the line, costing you way more than just money.
What's truly fascinating here, and I think what often gets underestimated, is that the people you bring on board, they aren't just cogs executing some predefined plan, not at all. They are actually the living, breathing engine of your entire business model. I mean, they shape the culture, they drive the innovation, they really determine your whole trajectory. So this raises a really vital question, doesn't it? How do you build a team that doesn't just execute your initial vision, but has that built-in capability to evolve, to adapt, and scale with it dynamically? That's a whole different challenge than just hiring.
Absolutely. It really is about foresight, right, from day one. Okay, so let's unpack this from the very start, like almost the conceptual level. One of the first, maybe the most fundamental decision an entrepreneur faces is, do I go this alone?
Mhm.
Or do I try and assemble a founding team? I mean, feels intuitive, doesn't it? Two heads are better than one. But what does the actual research tell us about this choice? Is there a clear winner?
Well, the data, it really leans heavily towards the team approach, especially for ventures that are aiming for significant scale. There's some really compelling research from Noam Wasserman back when he was at Harvard Business School. His studies, they looked at companies from like 2003 to 2016 and found that only a pretty small percentage of ventures, I think 16% to 20% of life sciences, tech, and those billion-dollar companies launched since 2005. Only that small percentage were actually started by a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And even within that group, many of those solo founders weren't really alone in the classic sense. They often
Yeah.
had deep operational experience already, or they had these really strong existing networks they could tap into for advice, connections, support. Okay, so even the quote-unquote solo founders weren't totally isolated. That really connects back to this idea of shared capabilities, doesn't it?
Right.
It's not just about having more hands, but different kinds of expertise, different perspectives. Exactly. And when you connect that to the bigger picture of successful companies, it just highlights the massive value of shared capabilities, diverse experiences, complementary skills. It's exactly why that VC legend, Arthur Rock, the guy who backed Intel, Apple, famously said, "I invest in people, not ideas." His whole philosophy was, if you find really good, adaptable people, they'll figure it out. They'll pivot, they'll refine, they'll find the right product, even if the initial idea needs a major shift. The idea itself, kind of secondary, in his view, to the team's ability to execute and adapt. And honestly, that perspective is even more relevant today, just given the increasing complexity of, well, everything. Products, services, customer experiences. We've really seen this big shift away from that romantic myth of the lone genius inventor
Right.
towards the much more realistic and frankly effective model of the enthusiastic interdisciplinary team. It's just almost impossible for one person to have mastery over all the domains you need: tech, marketing, finance, legal, ops, everything to build something scalable.
That's a really powerful way to think about it, shifting from the isolated genius to the integrated team. Okay, so let's say you've bought into that. You're building a team. How do you actually find those first really high impact people beyond just the bullet points on a CV? What are you really looking for in those crucial first hires? What are those attributes that make someone a rock star, not just a good hire?
Okay, this is where that atomic unit idea really hits home for team building. It's about this critical mix of both learned skills and innate qualities. Think about Dan Bricklin,
Right.
co-creator of VisiCalc, the early spreadsheet program. His huge success wasn't just from his learned skills like computer programming or software design, though obviously those were important. What really set him apart was his inherent skill as this tenacious problem solver. and his deep personal passion for just creating something useful, that powerful combination, that's what allowed him to push through really difficult periods, technical roadblocks that would have stopped most people. But here's the key insight I think that many founders miss. They often get fixated on the learned skills, the coding languages, the marketing frameworks, the financial modeling chops.
Yeah.
What they often overlook, and what Bricklin really shows, is that the innate drive, that relentless curiosity, that unwavering problem-solving approach, that deep passion to create and contribute, that's the true differentiator, especially when the learned skills hit a wall or the plan needs a radical change. It's what lets someone pivot fast, innovate under pressure, and just stick with it when others would quit.
That makes complete sense. That resilience, that ability to push through, it's critical in a startup. But okay, if someone's interviewing with you, how do you even begin to spot that innate drive? It feels like something that's maybe easy to talk about, but much harder to actually assess.
That's a great question, and it's where you have to go beyond those standard interview questions, right? You look for patterns. What's their history? Have they started things on their own, outside of work? What big challenges have they faced, and how do they really tackle them? Not just what they did, but what was their mindset? How do they approach the struggle? For founders themselves, this drive is often described as that burning desire to change the world, especially for the really revolutionary ventures. But this kind of intense drive, it isn't just for the founders. It really needs to run deep in your early team, too. You're looking for that raw commitment, that initiative, where even your most junior people are expected to genuinely act like an owner. Not just a title, but in how they think and what they do every day. They need to feel that personal stake.
Got it. So it's not just about what they can do, but how much they want to do it, their intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
That is a fundamentally different way to look at candidates. And okay, beyond the skills and that drive, how critical is personality, culture fit? Especially in those early days when the team is small and tense, it feels like that could either supercharge things or completely derail them.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Maybe even more so in the early days.
Yeah.
Everyone's wearing multiple hats, working super closely together. Tony Sia at Zappos, he famously said something like, if we get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term brand will just happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks directly to this point, right? The importance of personality fit, shared values. It's so critical because, as some experts point out, the identities we bring to work, shaped by our backgrounds, our experiences, they can deeply impact relationships, communication, the whole team dynamic. If there's a fundamental clash in values, or just how people prefer to work, it creates friction.
Yeah.
And that slows everything down.
So it's not just about shared values, but maybe also about how diverse perspectives can actually strengthen a team rather than causing conflict. Is that part of it too?
Precisely, yes. Beyond just individual fit, that interdisciplinary collaboration is so key for innovation. I mean, look at a company like IDEO, the design firm. They intentionally hire this wide mix of people, engineers and marketers, anthropologists and industrial designers, architects, psychologists. This isn't random. It's a deliberate strategy. And it consistently sparks surprising new ideas, breakthrough concepts. It actively encourages that cross-pollination where, someone's information becomes yours without even trying, just because you're exposed to totally different ways of thinking and solving problems. This blend of perspectives, when you manage it well, incredibly powerful for innovation, tackling complex problems. But the key is, even with all that diversity, there's usually a shared underlying ethos, collaboration, curiosity.
Okay, here's where, for me, it gets really interesting, especially thinking about that long-term view we talked about at the start. Your initial team, right? They might be this group of super scrappy generalists. Everyone does a bit of everything. Wearing multiple hats is an understatement. But as the business scales up, how does that team structure need to change? How does it evolve? And what happens when those brilliant early hires, the ones who got you from 0 to 1, maybe aren't the right fit for that next stage, say going from 1 to 100? This is such a common and often really painful challenge for growing companies.
Oh, it absolutely is. It's one of the hardest and honestly most emotionally difficult parts of scaling a business. People sometimes call it hiring ahead of the curve. Think about it. The operations person who can somehow take a company from 0 to $10 million in revenue. That person is often fundamentally different. Different skills, different mindset from the person needed to take it from $10 million to $100 million. At the start, you desperately need someone scrappy, versatile, willing to just figure things out, totally comfortable with ambiguity and chaos. Later on, you need a leader who can not just manage, but can design, implement, optimize repeatable, scalable processes, complex organizational structures. They might actually be less comfortable with chaos and more focused on efficiency and predictability.
So you're basically saying a founder needs to realize that the person who maybe built the first prototype in a garage, they might not be the right VP of engineering when you have a 100-person team and multiple product lines. That's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? Especially when these are loyal people who've been there from day one. What are the common traps founders fall into here?
It is incredibly tough, both practically and emotionally, yeah. And one huge pitfall founders really need to watch out for is title inflation. It's so tempting, right? Early days, cash is tight. You offer a really talented programmer the CTO title, or a great marketing person the CMO title. It's a way to attract them, reward their loyalty, especially if you can't pay top dollar yet.
Right. Makes
But
sense.
then what happens when the venture really takes off? And you genuinely need a CTO with, say, decades of experience in strategic architecture, managing huge teams, dealing with investors, skills that maybe your brilliant early coder doesn't have yet. Having to change titles later, reassign roles, maybe you bring in more seasoned execs above those early loyalists. It's not just common, it's a massive source of tension. It can lead to deep resentment, people feeling demoted, or even losing those amazing people who were with you right from the start. So how do you manage that expectation from day one without killing their motivation?
That's such a critical point. Wow. It sounds like managing expectations about roles, about growth, it needs to be an ongoing conversation right from the beginning, almost constantly. How do the successful companies navigate this shift? How do they manage the organizational structure changes?
Exactly. It has to be an ongoing conversation, not a one-off announcement. And the successful companies, they acknowledge this evolution as normal, expected even. There's a good analogy. Early hiring is like finding office space. You know you'll probably have to move offices several times as you grow, so you just get comfortable with change.
Huh. Right.
It means acknowledging that, yeah, ideally people grow with you. They take on bigger roles. But that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And you need to be prepared for those tough transitions. As organizations get bigger, they often shift towards more flexible ways of managing, moving away from really rigid hierarchies. This might mean combining teams across functions to tackle specific projects, or using something like a matrix-type structure.
Could you just maybe quickly explain what a matrix structure looks like for anyone less familiar with org design?
Oh, sure, yeah. So a matrix structure is basically where people might report to two or more managers. For instance, you might have a functional manager like the head of engineering, and also a project manager for the specific project you're working on right now. It allows for really flexible teams. You can assemble the right people quickly for a particular problem rather than being stuck in rigid silos. It usually helps communication and resource sharing across different parts of the company. And a fantastic example of this kind of specialization and integration happening as the company scales, Pandora, the music streaming service. As they grew, they found it worked best to actually embed their data scientists directly within the product teams focused on specific features. So the scientists became, part of that group. They reported directly to that team's manager instead of being in some separate centralized science department that just handed down reports.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it created this really deep integration, specialized focus. And it meant data science was just woven right into product development, not some external input. Really smart.
Okay, so you've built this dynamic team. It's evolving, shifting from generalists to specialists, adapting its structure. But the journey doesn't stop there, does it? The next big challenge, and it's equally tough, is actually keeping those amazing people, retaining them, and making sure they don't just feel valued, but that they're actually growing professionally with the company. How do you proactively plan for career growth so you don't lose your best people, especially those crucial early hires who've seen it all?
This is precisely where being proactive, instead of just constantly being reactive, really pays off big time. All that time you invest upfront in thoughtful recruitment, strategic hiring, and then in ongoing diligent management. It pays massive dividends down the road. It really means moving beyond just constantly putting out fires and instead focusing deliberately on nurturing your team, developing them as individuals. And a cornerstone of this, it's implementing continuous feedback and regular one-on-one meetings, manager and employee. And these aren't just, obligatory check-ins about tasks. They should be powerful, dedicated tools for building deep trust, for making sure individuals really understand how they're doing, what they're excelling at, and where they genuinely have opportunities to improve and grow. It's all about providing constant, consistent, constructive feedback, not just saving it all up for some annual review.
That's a key difference, isn't it? Consistent feedback, not just the annual thing. What does good feedback look like in this context? Because we all know bad feedback can be just as damaging, maybe more so, than no feedback at all.
Absolutely, yeah. Effective feedback, it needs to be specific. It needs to be actionable. And it has to be delivered with a genuine intention to help the person grow, not just to criticize. And importantly, it's a two-way street. The manager also needs to be listening to the employees' goals, their aspirations, their challenges. When your employees consistently know the company's core values, the strategic direction, and their managers are actively reinforcing that message in those one-on-ones, that helps build accountability. And critically, it aligns individual growth paths with where the company's trying to go. This transparent feedback loop, it's absolutely crucial for making sure your rock stars feel genuinely seen, truly valued for what they do, and most importantly, that they see a clear, exciting path forward within your organization.
And what happens if that proactive management, that continuous feedback, that career path planning, what if it just doesn't happen? What's the real cost of doing nothing here?
Well, the cost of inaction is huge. And it hits on multiple fronts: ignoring performance talks, putting off difficult feedback, failing to provide real growth opportunities. It doesn't just lead to simmering conflicts under the surface, it actively kills morale. It crushes productivity.
Yeah.
And most damaging, it results in the inevitable loss of your most valuable people. High performers, almost by definition, are driven to grow. If they don't see that chance with you, believe me, they will find it somewhere else. So proactive engagement. It helps you avoid those incredibly costly outcomes. And the cost isn't just recruitment fees, it's lost knowledge, lost team cohesion, lost momentum. It's a fundamental investment in your business's future, period.
Wow. What a deep dive into building truly high-impact rock star teams. We've really covered a lot today, haven't we? Everything from that basic fundamental decision, solo versus team, right through to identifying those crucial early attributes that go way beyond a resume, navigating that often tricky shift from generalist to specialist as you scale, and the absolute necessity of nurturing and retaining your talent for the long haul. It's just so clear that your people really are the bedrock of your entire business model.
Ultimately, yeah, your business model's enduring strength. It's completely tied to the strength, the adaptability, and the ongoing growth of your people. It's not about static boxes on an org chart, not at all. It's about building a living, evolving system where individuals are constantly learning, growing, contributing, not just, a collection of individuals doing tasks.
So as you think about your own venture, maybe your own team, what really stands out to you about building a team that can not only kick things off, but truly scale with your vision, that can adapt and thrive over years, especially when that means anticipating changing roles, navigating some tough conversations, and continuously nurturing that talent over time. That's the real challenge, isn't it? And maybe the real reward in building that rockstar team.